I have to give credit to this message to Michelle Weston. She came up with the idea, and when I asked her for permission to use it, she said that the words were God's and not hers. So I give thanks and credit to God for granting the words to both of us. Life's not easy, is it? It takes a certain amount of toughness to make it through our current society and culture. We have bills to pay, difficult people to handle, stresses to survive, and oh, the decisions. Which bill do I pay first? How am I going to tell that person the hard truth? How do I organize my day? How am I going to find that special someone? And which concession do I attend when there are three things I like going on at the same time? Affliction and hardship normally force us to pay attention to our own needs more than usual. When the going gets tough, the tough focus on themselves. When a ship is sinking, the rule of thumb is every man for himself. Isn't that the lesson that modern culture tries to teach us? In politics, people often vote for an official because of what the politician can get or do for them. We may make shopping choices because of where we can get the best deal, regardless of any standpoint on the company that makes it. We revere anti-heroes who might be out for their own good and benefit and their glory more than the greater good. Reality shows constantly pit people against each other and strongly encourage manipulation and backstabbing, all in the interest of money for the contestants and ratings for the TV producers. But the Bible offers counter-cultural wisdom. Christians are commanded to focus on others during desperate times. We're told to humbly consider others' needs over our own. Jesus instructs us to love the people who hate us. We're supposed to deny ourselves in order to see others succeed. Thankfully, we can see that attitude in some other places too. Namely, Tron Legacy. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, let me kind of bring you up to speed a little bit. In the original 1982 movie, Kevin Flynn, played by Jeff Bridges, was digitized into the computer world trying to uncover a plot by the Encom CEO to steal credit for his computer programs. While there in the grid, he teamed up with a program called Tron to bring to light the corruption and theft. Now, Tron Legacy takes place in current times and follows Kevin's son, Sam. Now, Kevin had mysteriously disappeared when his son was just a boy, and the movie finds Sam a reckless, directionless young man. Responding to a mysterious page from the office of his long-missing father, Sam ends up in the same computer world that his father helped create. With the help of a computer program named Cora, played by Olivia Wilde, Sam escapes the gladiatorial games arena and is reunited with his father, who has been trapped in the computer since his disappearance in 1989. Now, the main character I want to talk about isn't Sam, Kevin, or even Tron. It's Cora. She is a very unique and special kind of computer program. All other programs in the computer world are created by users in the real world, and then they can take on personalities inside the mainframe. Programs such as Tron and Clue, that's Kevin's personal creation and the whole antagonist in Tron Legacy, they can only function within the parameters for which they were created. But Cora is an isometric algorithm, or ISO. These programs appear to have spontaneously developed and were discovered by Kevin while he was exploring the grid. Kevin is particularly fascinated by them because they have evolved on their own beyond the structure of basic programs and even have a sort of genetic code. Clue hates the ISOs because he was designed to create the perfect system, and the ISOs are imperfect and disorderly, just like living humans. Clue sets out to commit program genocide, destroying all the ISOs except one. Cora is the last of her kind, having been saved and protected by Kevin Flynn and taught as his apprentice. Okay, so up to speed? Good, because here's where the good part starts. Shortly after Sam is reunited with his father, he's talking with Cora. She says that Kevin is teaching her the art of the selfless, taking yourself out of the equation. Now, the idea is that in order to make the best decisions and do the right thing, you should remove yourself from any considerations. You should think about everyone and everything besides yourself. When pondering a situation and trying to figure out what 2x plus y equals, take yourself out of the equation and you'll have your answer. In our daily lives and with simple choices, that may not be too hard. Let's say you're with some friends and trying to figure out where you guys want to go eat. You want Mexican, but everyone else wants Chinese. Take yourself out of the equation and do what's best for the group. Honestly, our world today would probably be better with a little more selflessness from everyone. Let's take this concept a little bit further. Sometimes we're surrounded by people that we don't like and that we really don't want to see succeed. Sometimes we're in situations where we really, really want something and our selfish nature comes to the surface. How are we supposed to take ourselves out of the equation then? That concept in action becomes a bit harder. In the Sermon on the Mount, recorded in Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 through 47, at least this part of it, Jesus has some pretty specific things to say about this situation. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you," this is Jesus speaking here, "but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even the pagans do that?" All right, easy to say, hard to do. But don't even murderers show love to those that they love? God calls us to a higher standard, to show love and self-sacrifice to the unlovable. Showing it to the unlovable. What else does the Bible say? Philippians 2, 3 and 4. "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others." All right, let's look at something else here. "But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked." How did Jesus treat those who were ungrateful and wicked? He was kind to them. And that verse is from Luke chapter 6, verse 35. John 15, verse 13 and 14. "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command." James 3, 14 through 16. "But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder in every evil practice." Now, here's a good verse on selflessness. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22. "Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord." Selflessness. Okay, to be fair, let's not forget what comes just 3 verses later, in verse 25. "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and," keyword here, husbands, "gave himself up for her." And I think that most people forget that that whole verse, that whole chapter, that starts that section of Ephesians. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Selflessness to one another. So, look at Joseph in the Old Testament for a minute. Even though his brothers had sold him into slavery, When they came to Egypt seeking food, he forgave them, and then he helped them. If he had been selfish, he could have demanded that his brothers be punished or even put to death. And with the power that he had, he was second in Egypt, second only to the Pharaoh. He could have had them killed. But rather, he did what was best for them. And then, of course, there's Jesus. The Son of God selflessly left heaven and came to this world to give himself as a sacrifice for man's sins. He had no selfish motives in his actions. So, in Tron Legacy, we see Korra put herself in danger to protect Sam. In the fight at the end of the Lion Club, she fights against Clu's guards, defending Sam when they come to capture him and his father. During the battle, her arm is cut off, sending her in a shock. Now, Kevin and Sam get away with her, and eventually we have a peaceful moment where Kevin is able to rewrite Korra's code, healing her. While she's unconscious, Sam says to his father, "She risked her life for me." Kevin replies, "Some things are worth the risk." Now, a bit later, they've infiltrated Clu's base and have discovered what his plan really is. Clu's main guard and the uber bad guy, Rinsler, is close to discovering the trio. So Korra darts out from their hiding place, causing Rinsler to chase her, leading him away from Sam and Kevin. Sam's in surprise and disbelief, and he asks out loud, "What is she doing?" His father calmly says, "Taking herself out of the equation." Isn't that how Jesus sees us? We're like the ISOs in the grid, imperfect and disorderly. Despite that, Christ sees the beauty in us, and he believes that we are worth the risk and hardship that he took when he came to earth and then died. According to Clu's program, the creation of the perfect system meant destroying imperfections such as the ISOs. According to God's law, our sins mean that we should also be condemned and go to hell. But Jesus intervened for us so that that doesn't have to happen. We can't be perfect. It's just not going to happen. Look at me. But we don't have to be. Towards the end of the movie, Kevin Flynn realized this, and he says, "The thing about perfection is that it is unknowable, yet it's right there in front of us." Now, though he probably didn't mean it in this way, that perfection in front of us is in the person of Jesus Christ. He is the only perfect human to ever exist. And because of his selfless act, our imperfections don't have to result in our destruction. John the Baptist says about Jesus, "He must become greater. I must become less." How can we do this? If the Bible tells us to be like Jesus, how can we take ourselves out of the equation? The answer is right there. All right, you know the identity discs that the characters in Tron have. Every program in the grid has one. It stores all of the program's identity, information, and experiences. All of their electronic DNA, everything that they know and that they have done, can be found in that identity disk. The data stored in the disk is how Kevin heals Korra. His disk is also the prize that Clu is seeking because as the creator of the grid, all of Kevin's knowledge and abilities can be found there. When Korra goes to distract Rinsler, she gives her disk to Kevin. Symbolically, she's giving everything that she is to her creator. Now, we're supposed to do that same thing with Jesus. Give everything that we have to him, everything that we are. Now, a little later, suspecting that they might face Clu in the end, Kevin exchanges discs with Korra, giving her his own. In effect, she now has all of the knowledge of the Creator passed down directly from him to her. We have the same thing in the form of the Bible. All right, so taking ourselves out of the equation, looking to Jesus, How do we do this? How do we have love for our enemies? 3 broad steps. First of all, self-denial. Matthew 16:24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Hold up others more than yourself. Humble yourself." And this is represented in 1 Peter 5:6. Humble yourselves, therefore, unto God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Deny yourself. So self-denial. Second thing, self-control. Having self-control brings every thought and action into the will of God. 2 Peter 1, verses 5 and 6. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to your goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness. Third thing, self-sacrifice. Christians are called to be living sacrifices to God, living each day to accomplish the good works for which they were created, so that the glory of God and Jesus might be seen in them. Romans 12:1. Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. So God calls us to follow the example of Jesus, to whenever we have anything in our lives, take ourselves out of the equation. And if we do that, if we are following Christ's example, we will be richly rewarded by God. God bless you guys.